Well, hello, this is Peter Combs from Bidamount.com and P.O. Combs Asian Art, located in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And today is Friday, August 23rd, 2019. I hope everybody had a great week last week. We did. All my kids are, one of my kids was away. He's back from California, staying with us for a few days before he goes back to college. We had a nice lobster feast last night, as a matter of fact. It was great. But here we are. And last week on eBay, there were some things that did really well. There were some nice things on Catawiki. We're going to get into them, see what they brought. But before we get started, a couple of things. A few folks have asked me, would I be willing to point out, as we've done in past weeks, would I be willing to point out copies and intentionally misrepresented things on Catawiki the way I do on eBay for some reason. I don't know why they would ask, but yeah, of course I will. And if I see them, I will do it. I don't point out things that are accurately dated and advertised, for example, as the seller is putting it up as 20th century, or they're calling it vintage, and it's bringing thousands of dollars. You're buying. The people at that point are bidding based on their imaginations and not on what they're being told by the seller, and they're seeing something, obviously, in most cases, that isn't there. So. Keep that in mind, but I'll be happy to do it. Right now, this week on eBay, there's one fake in particular that's doing really well, and I want to point it out in case you've got it on your watch list, or you're planning on bidding on it, or you have bid on it, and it's this plate. It's a Martha Washington plate that was originally done in 1796 as a gift from a Dutch trader to the Washington family. The plate is an absolute, in my opinion, reproduction. One of the biggest issues facing it is the problem of the monogram and the style of the font that was used in it. It is not a typical font that one would see on the originals. All right, these plates have been copied endlessly since. And if you look carefully at the way the M and the W, which stands for Martha Washington, is done, you'll notice the thickness and the strokes are at considerable variance with an original plate that was sold by Michael Grogan in Boston a few years ago. Here it is. It brought almost $250,000. But if we blow up the picture here and take a good look at the central monogram, you're going to see that the M and the W are drawn considerably differently. And there it is, okay? Now look at that very carefully, and you'll see the strokes are thinner overall. The broad strokes are thinner, and the thin strokes are much thinner, okay? And if you go back, and we'll take another look back at the one that's being offered on eBay right now, and you'll notice that the strokes are heavier. The font is at slight variance with the originals that were produced in China in 1796 for the Washington family. So let's switch back over. One more. There it is. Okay, and here's the font layout on the copy. All right, it is not correct. Also, if you notice, the foot rim on this does not look like an 18th century Chinese porcelain foot rim by any stretch. It is not nearly what it should be. It is too chunky, too raw. Not refined enough. The paste is the wrong color, and the general shape of the foot leading down to the unglazed portion is too broad. It is shaped inappropriately. It is probably perhaps made in France. Anyway, it's up to $3,000, and you want to avoid it. All right, now let's mosey on over to what happened on eBay last week. There was quite a bit of stuff on here last week. There were some nice things. There wasn't as in the quantity as many as there have been in previous weeks, but the quality of the stuff was quite good. And we're going to hop in here and go through some of them. All right, one of the things I wanted to mention was that this robe was put up by a seller. I don't think he's got a lot of experience. He's in New York. And he put this up, and for some reason he put a pretty big reserve on it, and it sold for $5,666, and it didn't meet the reserve. And the problem that he's now dealing with, he relisted it, and it's selling again, and it's up to $2,550, and We'll see how it does. The reserve is not met again so far at $25.50. I'm assuming he probably relisted it and lowered the reserve slightly. This is a really bad way to sell, by the way. If you list things properly, as we talked about in the Cassini recording a few weeks ago, if you list things properly, you run them for 2 weekends, get full 10 days out of it, starting on Thursdays or Fridays, title them properly, fill in all the little boxes, you're going to get the exposure you need, and you're going to find out what your item is worth pretty accurately, as long as you follow all the rules for doing listings. And now he's sort of, I'm afraid he might be fighting an uphill battle. We're going to watch it and see how it does. I hope it does well. It's a very nice robe. It's a late 19th, early 20th century robe and in very good condition. But be very careful when you start running around setting reserves. You'll notice on here a lot of the biggest sellers on eBay, the people that really do big sales, make a lot of money. They typically start all of their auctions at under $10 with no reserves. That's pretty much the pattern. There are a few over in Europe. If they have something esoteric, I've noticed they'll put a reserve on it. But the reserve is modest. The reserve is within the ballpark of reality. All right. But in general, putting big reserves on things, if you're doing your job properly, listing, there's really no need for it. Okay. It may not bring what you want, but that's what it's worth on that given day. So let's see how this robe does. I hope it does well for him. All right, and then on to this. This was that Katani vase that I put up. It was a buy it now. I've included a few buy it nows that I've come across in the newsletter each week because I think they're very good buys. You don't get the fun of chasing it in an auction, but you do get the fun of getting it right away. And this I thought was a pretty terrific vase. I liked it a lot. I like Katani wares, and it did fine. It ended up selling. Somebody bought it. It sold for $475, which was right within the realm of the asking price. If it wasn't, it may have been the asking price, but it was a nice piece of Katani and reasonably priced. All right, and then there was this, the Kangxi Chinese Amari shell-formed dish. These turn up fairly often. Very good, fine dealers in England and the Netherlands and France sell these. And this was on the other day. It had just a price of $150. Very reasonable for that. That's a perfectly reasonable trade. And somebody bought it right away. It was gone, I think, the morning after the newsletter went out. So I suspect somebody that got the newsletter bought it. I hope you did, because this was a very nice piece of porcelain, and $150 is very reasonable. We've seen these in the past sell for $350, $450, and a very good dealer and a good shop will sell these for in the $500 to $700 range. All right. So anyway, that sold, which I was glad to see. And now on to this was the pair of lotus form famille tiles. They're probably 19th century, but beautiful. Maybe late 18th. I don't know. Hard to date without picking them up or really spending some time looking at them. But they're very well done, beautiful condition, and they did do all right. They ended up selling for $898 with 39 bids. Quite attractive. And then moseying on over to here, the robe, that wonderful skirt. And I had mentioned last week that this skirt was very similar in some ways with the rondelles on it to a panel that had sold a few days earlier before this one went up. And it sold for, I don't know, $1,200 or $1,300, but it had some condition issues. This was in better shape, and it ended up selling for $1,913. Which is, I think, reasonable. That was a very nice piece of silk and very fine workmanship. Always look at the workmanship. Always look at the workmanship on this. And this was beautifully detailed, fine needlework, lots of dragons, which makes it very desirable, and it did fine. All right. Always look at the quality, And if you're not sure, just leave a bid on it. You never know. But anyway, as I say, always leave a bid. We're going to have a few examples where people didn't hear. All right, this is a nice piece, nice Kangxi plate with figures going around the outside of it. This was a fairly good size one, as I recall. It was around 9 inches, I think. And it ended up selling for $427. All right, it was 11 inches. It was a big one, 11 inches long. I think that was a very nice buy. That's a good size plate, and it looked to be in nice shape. This was being sold by our friend Steve up in New Hampshire. He's a local dealer up there. He gets a lot of stuff. He deals in everything. He's a good seller. All right, and then on to this. This was that nice little late 18th, early 19th century painting. that was put up by somebody. It was framed, had a crack in the middle, had a few issues going on with it, but nicely painted, very good detail. Looks like it's on laid paper, perhaps. And it did fine in the end. It ended up bringing $692, just a little under $700, which I think is fair for that. That's a nice genre scene, very typical of the Chinese paintings that you saw from around 1800, often depicting occupational things like rice processing or tea making or porcelain making. Sort of the same palette, same feeling, same style of drawing. And those bring more, but this was an interesting painting. I liked it. And then on to this, the Arita bottle. This had a little restoration at the top, but this is a 17th century Arita bottle, circa 1680 or so. It was around 14 inches tall, good sized bottle, but it had a repair up here around the mouth if you looked at it. But very nicely painted. This was a good piece of Arita. If you're a Arita buyer, I hope you bought it. This is a nice pot. Some people think these are Chinese. They're not. They're Japanese. But this went pretty reasonably. $346 with a little bit of an inch or so restoration around the top. Didn't bother me particularly because 17th century Japanese blue and white are quite rare. You have to remember that the Chinese have been making porcelain or pseudo porcelains, since the 9th or 10th century in some form. The Japanese didn't really learn how to make this stuff until the 1600s. So at the time that this was made, it was very early in Japanese porcelain production, as far as they go. But it was a nice vase, and I think somebody got a great piece for their collection. All right, and then on to this. This, I think, was one of the bargains of the week. This was a very nice Tsuba, beautifully worked, high-quality metal work on it. Just a good old example. And look at this. It went for $117. All right, that was very inexpensive. I hope you didn't have it on your watch list and forget about it or something. But this should have been hit with a $300 bid almost right off the bat. That was a good Tsuba, and I think somebody that knows Tsuba's got a great buy on their hands. Wonderful. All right, and then on to this, that Ming tubular incense holder or brush pot, depending on how you wanted to use it, with the horseman riding around the rim. I liked this a lot. I thought this was nice, and there's buildings and architecture, nice old color to it. I liked this. And it did fine in the end. It brought $1,421. It was a good-looking bronze, nice color. If you can get a bronze with good, deep patina, they're very satisfying to own. They really are. And then on to this, the Kangxi plate with the ladies in the courtyard, and you have the jesters down here at the bottom, the kids, and how did it do? It did pretty well. It brought $471. It had a restoration to it, but it still did fine. These plates in perfect condition bring $1,500 quite often. But it was a good-looking plate, nonetheless, with an old repair. And then on to the Yixing-lined pewter-inscribed teapot with jade handles and spout. This was a nice little pear-shaped example. It had a few dents in it, but it was a good old one, authentic. And I think there was a line to the liner somewhere, maybe inside, which held the price back a bit because you can't really put tea in them once you crack the liner, obviously. But this was a nice example and beautifully done with nice script, and it ended up selling for $1,550, which is pretty good price. And on to this. This was that really interesting reticulated brush pot. It's sort of an oddball thing. I like these. I like these sort of old, genuine curiosities that turn up out of Asia, China. I suspect this was made in the late 19th, early 20th century by somebody who was a pretty good carver. Beautiful quality carving, made of bamboo, roux head feet on it and so forth. Had a few losses on it. This kind of thing hasn't been written about much in Chinese culture, Chinese art books, art history books. They don't do a lot. Occasionally you'll see these in a book on scholars' objects, but not often. And as a result, they don't bring a lot of money, but they can be very satisfying to own. And this only went for $139, which I think was very reasonable. This was sort of a nifty thing. It would be a great thing to have around. How tall was it? It was about 8 inches tall, 16 centimeters. perfectly good size of a standard brush pot, maybe a little bit bigger than some, and not a bad price at all. Not a bad price at all. And then on to this, the Chinese export, circa 1840 or so, famille rose vase with fu lions on the shoulder with this shaped rim around it. Nicely done, good looking vase. You've seen them before. This was a good one. It's interesting. There were a couple of these up this week. This one went for $360. All right, and then right after it, there was also this one, a celadon one with chimeras on the neck. This was a little more elaborate, a little fancier. Here's a picture of the bottom, good-looking old bottom on that, some crackle in the glaze, which is not bad. And here's the decoration, good quality, lots of gold in the hair of the women and all that business, and nice-looking chimera on here, very animated, climbing around on the neck with gilding on it. And this brought $502. It was quite similar to the other one, but a better grade celadon, soft celadon glaze, and nice applied relief work on the neck. And it did fine. It did fine. That was a pretty vase. It was the same seller. It had both. All right, and then on to this. You've seen these before many times in ivory. They also did them in sandalwood around the same time period. And this was a nice sandalwood card case. And if you own sandalwood, it has a wonderful smell to it. And the smell tends not to dissipate even after a couple hundred years. I have a sandalwood box that I bought that was made in the 18th century, late 18th century, and it still smells like sandalwood 200, almost, over 200 years later, 180, 200 years later. So at any rate, this was a nice card case, nicely carved, appeared to be in good condition, and it went pretty reasonably, $204. As you know, the ivory ones like this tend to bring about double or triple this amount, but in sandalwood, and you don't have to worry about exporting them. So you can buy these from somebody overseas and ship them to the U.S. or vice versa. You don't have to worry about them getting interdicted in customs. The ivory ones, you got to be careful. You could get in trouble. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just pointing it out. All right, now over here, there was this Kangxi bowl. This was a nice bowl. It had a hairline in it, as I recall, but the decoration on it was in remarkably good condition. Notice the lack of wear to the gold. The gold on these tends to get worn very, very quickly and easily. This bowl was about 7 inches in diameter. Nicely done. Here's the foot rim on it. Very typical Kangxi foot with that ivory edge to it, that ivory tone to it. And in the end, it did pretty well. It brought $275. Not all the money in the world, but it did okay. I think of course, it was a pretty good buy. But the hairline held it back. What else was going on? Minor firing flaws, and there was a manufacturing crack in it. Yeah. All right, so that was a pretty good buy. If you like Kangxi pieces and you can accept them without being absolutely perfect, because perfect, this bowl probably would have brought $1,200 or so. All right, cracks make a big difference. And then on to this, the Chinlung, sort of based on a guglet with that garlic neck right under the Cocoa Cafe decorated rim. Beautiful quality, though. Nice 18th century example. And I think $660 was very reasonable for that. This is a particularly fine one in good condition and came from a good seller over in the Netherlands that we know. We keep track of ancient arts. But that was a nice-looking bottle. All right. And then over here to the cup. The little cup. We talked about this a couple of times. I just thought it was wonderful. I love the Faux Bois work on it and the cafe ground with the nice script and calligraphy on it. It had a Chinlung mark on it and so forth. Here it is. Here's the inside of it. There's the mark. And it's either, it might be early 19th century, but it's a very nice example. They use that mark on late Qing and early 19th century pieces during the Chai-Qing period. But anyway, this little cup did very well in the end. It brought $6,003. Great things in small packages, but it was a really interesting example. And this was the same. Also, the seller had those two vases, Migliari, over in the UK. Good-looking thing. And then on to this, had a lot of inquiries about this Meiping vase, beautiful cobalt ground, texturized cobalt ground with over drawing of gilding of butterflies on the vase. Just a lovely example. This was a nice vase. Here's the bottom of it. It's got that broad, flat foot rim on it. Beautiful, beautiful. I love the cobalt ground on this. You can see how they blew the glaze on, and just lovely. It ended up selling for $7,718, which I don't think was unreasonable. This, in the end, this was a very, very nice piece. It was sold by a seller over in Dorset, Baby Dragon. All right, he gets nice things periodically. And then on to this, the Femme June with Famille Rose enamel moon flask. These are nice. This is a later one, late 19th, early 20th century, but very pretty, good color, good condition, and these always look nice anywhere. And went for $358, which I think was, very reasonable. I don't think that was a high or a low price, right in the thick of it. Nice thing, nice looking thing. And then on to this, the last thing is, as far as what's sold, is this panel, this very interesting inscribed panel. I think it was dated to the early 20th century, but nice quality needlework, beautiful silk damask with script over it. And I think this was probably a very, very good buy. I think this went for under the money. It ended up selling for $1,225, dated 1911. I thought this might bring 3,000 or so. I think this was a very, very good buy. However, if you look these up, they don't turn up everywhere. These dated silks, things like this, they weren't commonly done. They were usually done for something specific. This week I saw a painting that was somebody emailed me about in the Midwest. Very interesting painting of Chinese famous Han doctor, and it was signed and inscribed as a gift from 1907. Very similar era when people were in China were giving gifts to foreigners and so forth. That was a painting that was all inscribed. This is a silk that's all inscribed from that same time period. But I think $1,225 for that was a very reasonable purchase. All right, and now let's take a look and see what's coming up this week on a few things at Catawiki. And I wanted to point these out. These were on Catawiki last week. These were that pair of early Arita ewers. These were very old. These were early 1700s, late 1600s, wonderful quality, and they ended up selling for just $537 for the pair. This was quite a good buy, and these were 19 centimeters tall, so they were about 8 or so inches each. I think that $250 a piece. That's very reasonable. I think that was a wise buy for someone. And other things that are coming up that haven't closed, there's a lot of stuff on Catawiki this week. They seem to be loading up over there. Is this very nice enamel plate, 18th century Kangxi period. It's up to $130. Oh, it sold for $134. This sold since apparently sold since I started getting ready to do the video. All right, and then this interesting. This is a Republic period dish. This is a very nice plate, I think. At first, I was wondering if it wasn't from the 50s because of the style of decoration, but you take a look at the back, that foot, that style of thing, and then you take a good look at the decoration. This is, 1930s. It looks like work to me, with the old root stool, with the instrument on it. He's carrying a fan, big Yixing teapot over here, scholars' books, and it's a scholar's studio scene, obviously. And here he is. Okay, nice looking plate. This is up right now. This will be in the newsletter this week. You can come check it out. It's got 9 days to go. Handy's Antiques down in New York at Staten Island has this. They get good things periodically too. They're pretty good buyers down there. And then there's this. These are 4 nice old Chinese kisi panels. If you like kisi work, these are good looking ones. And I like the that sort of dark teal ground that they used on these, and the kids and so forth. There's 4 of these though in this set. Here's another one with the rider and so forth, and see how they do. Okay, there's 4 days to go. They're only up to $32. They'll be in the newsletter. And then over here, this just came on last night. Nice Kangxi plate with a foliate shaped rim, sort of a semi-lotus formed rim. Very typical Kangxi dish on the back. That's what you want to see. They did these sort of sprays of flowers around them, so forth. Nice looking ivory foot rim. A few little nicks and bumps here on the foot, which is not unusual. And it's 15 inches in diameter. It's a big plate, and it's only up to $227. Ought to bring $1,500 to. I got to look at it a little more carefully, but certainly over $1,500 somewhere, as long as it's not busted. And also, this is on right now. This is a nice amari with Kangxi period dish with underglazed blue and amari decoration. But nice Kangxi piece. Closes in a couple days. It's up to $246. We'll see how that does. And there's this Qinlong cafe ground pot. We've seen the shape before, but this one has nice colors and it's in good condition. And it just went up. It closes in a week. It has no bids yet. You want to check that out. That'll be on the newsletter page. The Catawiki stuff is at the bottom of the newsletter page, underneath the eBay stuff, and then they have their own page with the same stuff on it, so it's easy to find. All right, and then this is a very nice 15th century Chinese plate. It's not getting a lot of attention, which is kind of surprising to me. This is an old plate. This is the real deal. This is not a copy of a Ming dish. This is a 15th century Hongxi dish. Here's a picture of the back of it. There it is. That's exactly what the back of one of these should look like. A nice looking foot rim with some iron oxide lines on it. Here's a side shot of it. Okay, this is a good looking dish. And what size is this thing? And they've even has an applied copper rim on it, which is kind of cool. And it is goodness, I hate this, the way eBay has this new thing set up. They keep changing things. All right, there it is. 50, let's see, 50 diameter, 260 millimeters, so it's about 8 inches. All right, there we go. All right, that's it for the week. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you want to make a comment, I'd love to hear from people. We do read them. We do pay attention to what people are saying. And subscribe to the newsletter over at Bidamount and see what we find each week to put in there that's on eBay and from Catawiki. And have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time. Okay. Oh, we're working on getting the catalogs up for the September sales in New York. We have all the files, and we're processing them actually as I sit here talking. So the September sales for Christie's, Sotheby's, I got to check to see if we got anything on Bonhams yet, and they'll be up on the site this coming week. And we've also put up some new catalogs from the Metropolitan Museum series, and they all can be found in the reference section on bidamount.com where the catalogs are kept. So there's quite a bit of stuff that's been going on over there. Okay, have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time, and we'll do a preview video too of the New York sales in the next week or so. Okay, all righty, bye bye.